Saad Sawayan, the great Saudi anthropologist. He said to me, the memories are lost in a lot of people's minds. And then in Saudi Arabia, it has an unusually small elder population. Now that's our memories. So this is where we're going to get all of our oral history and all of our information is from these older people. So it took me maybe a good 20 years to research and write it. The first music I heard was on the radio. Songs of Muhammad Abdu and Rabi Segler. And in the Arabian Peninsula, heritage, history is carried in songs. My name is Dr. Lisa Ourkevich. I'm an executive leader in higher education and intangible heritage research. Right now I am a fellow at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., and I'm a professor of musicology and ethnomusicology, and I've spent the last 30 years doing research in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states on music and intangible heritage. And before that, or earlier on that, I was in Kuwait for 20 years, where I taught at the university there, and I was an administrator of the college. I first came to Saudi Arabia in the 1990s. I was here between 1994 and 1998, and the first music I heard was on the radio. It was songs of Muhammad Abdu and Rabi Segler, and just really liked it, really found it interesting. And early on in those years I lived in Taif, so I also heard sounds of Taif, which was an unusual sounding music that we'd hear sometimes on the radio. So that was my first introduction to it. And then I made some friends, some Saudi friends, which in those days wasn't easy because people were shy and I was foreign. And but little by little, women started to invite me to their homes and invite me to weddings. And it was when I first started to go to wedding parties that I really started to see, you know, the excitement and the life of Saudi music among these women who were really enjoying the celebrations and the sounds and the dancing. So it was very exciting and very vibrant. The weddings were fascinating. There were different types, you know, depending on where you were from. So you would meet people up in the mountains, depending on where I lived, because I lived in different places. I lived in Khamis Mashay, I lived in Riyadh, and then we traveled a lot. I went to Najran and all different places. So the weddings depended on where you were, because this is a big country, and each little region has its own little culture, which I appreciate. I'm an American. I come from a big country where we have all these different cultures in different parts of the country. So I loved it, and I thought it was very fascinating. Yeah, but the weddings were just wonderful and vibrant, and what I loved is that we had women musicians. So in a way, in those days things were more segregated, but that gave a lot of opportunities for women to play music that I didn't even see in the United States. Like we had women on drum sets, I saw, and I would rarely see that in the United States. Or I've seen women violinists back in the early days. So in a way, it was kind of wonderful to see these women communities, and where women were so active in doing all the jobs that were needed at a wedding. The women could do all of them, from musician to server to everything. Music's really important. It's a reflection of a society. If you want to know what's going on with your kids, go look at the kind of music they're listening to. So on a personal level, it tells us a lot, and on a community level. And in the Arabian Peninsula, I especially like heritage songs, folk songs, and also art songs, the sophisticated sort of classic music. And when we look at heritage music, it's really important. It tells us, because people sing, you might sing to your baby, you might sing in the field when you're working, you might sing with your camels. And you're doing that, you're not paid to do that, nobody tells you to do that. You're just doing that because it's part of your community, it brings comfort, it helps you express yourself. And in the Arabian Peninsula, heritage, history is carried in songs. So for instance, I had a student in Kuwait, and his grandfather died because a car fell on him. This was in the 1960s. And we know about that because it's in a song. There's a song about it, the kind of car, the year it happened, the details of the accident, whatever. And they keep the history alive through these songs. And that's just one song. There are a million songs that help carry the history. And when people sing, it helps you remember information better than if you just say it. So music has the ability to really embed data in your brain and in your memory. There are two big challenges right now. The whole world, of course, is experiencing globalization. So other so industry is coming into, and there's like sort of one type of industry that's coming into all the communities and all the societies, like whether it's movies, certain types of movies, or certain types of media. And so globalization is having an impact on old heritage. And by heritage, we mean something that's survived for 50 years, at least 50 years, and we want it to continue into the future. So heritage are things we want our children to learn. There's a lot of things from 50 years ago that still take place, but we don't want to continue into the future. But heritage are those important things. Our songs, the practices, the methods, the way of life, the way we believe things, the way we treat our family, those are parts of heritage that we want to continue on. So globalization around the world is impacting heritage. And then in Saudi Arabia, it has an unusually small elder population. So let's take the United States. 20% of the population in the United States is over the age of 65. That's like 1 in 5 people is over the age of 65. In Saudi Arabia, it's 2.8%, not 20%, 2.8% is over the age of 65, and over the age of 75 is 0.8%, it's less than 1%. Now that's our memories. So this is where we're going to get all of our oral history and all of our information is from these older people, but the life expectancy in Saudi Arabia, actually it's good, it's pretty good, went up to 80 recently, the years of 80, but we don't have that many people between 65 and 80 left. And so it's really important that we start to gather their memories. And especially, there's 2 types of memories that you can gather. People who were practitioners, they actually did it. They actually sang the song, they made the drum, they played the instrument, they did the dance. Or there are the people who observed. And they're important too. I watched my grandmother cook. I watched my aunts dance. And we can get memories from them, and they're important, or we can get the primary memory from the people that actually did it. It doesn't matter. At this we want all their memories because they're all wonderful, and they're going to make the heritage richer when we start to capture this. And a lot of organizations have already captured memories. They've done a wonderful job at Dara, which we were just at, and the King Faisal Center and so forth. But we want to get these more detail. Whatever we can get in the next years will be wonderful, and I think it's really going to further enrich the community and further enrich the society and further enrich the education that we hope to form and the curriculum so for children, for schools, for colleges, that will happen in the future. My book, Music and Traditions of the Arabian Peninsula, and then Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states are in there because they share a tradition. A lot of the people from the tribes of central Saudi Arabia moved into the Gulf states, so we see the same wedding in Kuwait, like where I lived. We would have exactly the same wedding if you were from a tribe, Tari or Shimri or whatever. You do the same practices they would in Riyadh that we would see there. And so that's why I named it after the bigger region, although Saudi Arabia is the most important. It's the largest country and has the biggest impact. So it took me maybe a good 20 years to research and write it because I wanted to make sure I had good data for my students that was equal to what I would have taught in the United States. And we didn't have enough information because this is oral society and music wasn't written down. So I had to go out and kind of capture a lot of things. And I wanted to make sure I was accurate. I didn't want to just teach you one tribe. All the tribes are different. The way they all dance is different. So I wanted to make sure that if I was going to talk about one tribe, I was very specific. It's this tribe at this place at this year. This is the patterns we saw. And so by interviewing lots of people, by going back maybe 10 years later and double checking, by going out, and I worked with teams of people who helped me, professors of Arabic and things, because the language is very complicated and difficult. And going back to the leaders of tribes, or going back to the other people along in more urban areas and settled areas, and making sure, okay, are we all in agreement? This is what we're going to do. This is, before I would try to record it and write it and teach it, because I felt a responsibility. But my students trust me. I'm a professor. I'm a doctor of musicology and ethnomusicology. And I want to make sure I was accurate. I gave the most authentic material to them. and I put where it came from and how I came up. And then people would challenge me. There were students, they'd say, well, my grandmother says you're wrong. She says you're wrong about this. I'd say, bring her in. Grandmother come to class, or sometimes I would go out and meet with their families, and we would talk. And I tell them why I came out with this, and they would tell me with their side. And sometimes they would change my mind, and we would double check. I would change my mind and say, you know what, you're right, I should have thought of that. Other times I'd be like, no, the evidence is pointing too much this direction. But in either case, I try to justify what I say. I just don't take anything from anybody that tells me anything about the heritage. Because the great anthropologist, Saad Sawayan, the great Saudi anthropologist, he visited me in Kuwait and came to my center. And he said to me, the memories are lost in a lot of people's minds. And this was 20 years ago, he told me this. So I take that with a grain of salt. I always keep that in mind. And so I double check whenever people tell me things. And people will be, I'm sure of this. And then we go deeper and we go, oh, it was a little something else. So yeah, so my book's been really successful. It's used in universities around the world, and just hoping, the next phase takes place where we go a little deeper, we get more information coming up in these next 10 years. The book, about 20 years. I started gathering data and then go back and back, and the publisher was so angry at me so many times. Where's this book? And I said, I don't feel right. And they cut it down, actually. They made it much shorter because they're like, nobody wants to read. So I still have tons of data and information, tons of video, tons of field work from my experiences. But there's so much more. This is a huge country. Saudi Arabia is a huge physical landmass with different types of people, with people of the sea, people of the mountains, people of the desert. Really complicated and complex communities. Each one is very proud of their traditions, and you don't want to get it wrong. You want to be very respectful with people, and there's so much more that we should record and capture, and especially, like I say, in these coming years, while we still have these wonderful memories with us. Thank you so much.